Welcome everyone to this Let's Play of Kerbal Space Program 1.0.5. Now there is a major software upgrade going on at Kerbal Space Center right now, but this particular craft is not compatible with that upgrade, so we're going to get cracking. So let's run our usual launch script, if I could spell, and get ourselves off to our destination. Now if you have been watching the previous few episodes, you'll know where we're going. And it's been a long time coming. If you've not been watching, why not? But you do have a surprise in store, so do keep watching and just see if you can predict where that surprise will be coming from. Now, I did make a couple of mistakes in the previous episode. Now, one of those mistakes I have corrected whilst in the VAB, and one I have not. So, if you'd like a little bit of a quiz, why don't you put in the comments what you think those two mistakes were? They are both visible. One of them involves parts, one of them doesn't, so there's a couple of tips for you, a couple of starters for 10 if you are having trouble spotting what those mistakes are, and there will be a few visual clues along the way as we go on our trip to Duna. Now, the problem that we had with the major software upgrade is that one of the changes that was made to the Rover parts that we are going to be using was for the Rover wheels. Now the Rover wheels now start rather than with the suspension compressed, with the suspension extended, and that caused the wheels to clip through the base of the service bay in which the little rover is stored, and that caused rather unusual bug, which was the camera started lagging behind the craft until eventually the ship was well into the distance and you simply couldn't focus the camera on the craft. Why clipping wheels causes that problem, I don't know, but there you go. Still, we're off on our way to Duna. That shouldn't be a problem for our objective. But whilst we are using KOS here to control our flight plan, it does give us an opportunity to do something else. And that is going to be planning our transfer. So let's open up the transfer window planner. Now I've got a tutorial for this on my channel, but we'll just have a quick recap as we ascend here. Now, our origin is going to be Kerbin at an initial orbit of 100 kilometers. Our destination is going to be Duna, as our booster stage there separates. But we're not going to go into a final orbit around Duna of 100 kilometers. Let's set that to a final orbit of 50 kilometers. Now, you can set whether you want an insertion burn or not. Now that can obviously take into account quite a large amount of delta V needed to capture and circularize, and we are going to be using aero-capture, so in theory we could click that on, but we're not going to. We can now specify when we would like to depart. It can either be now, year 1, day 228, anytime up to year 3, day 228. The titles don't seem to be lining up with their relevant boxes right here. And then we can specify the time of the flight that we anticipate the flight taking. I'm just going to accept all the defaults and press plot it. Now that will generate for us this heat map here on the right. The scale is shown here on the far right. The brighter, the redder the colour, the more delta V that particular transfer will take to complete. The colder and darker, the less delta V. Now, whilst we are considering what that means, I'm just going to interrupt the commentary to complete pre-alignment towards our blue maneuver node, because as we know, the KOS program doesn't align very well. So let's just get ourselves pre-aligned and then leave KOS to complete the rest of the circularization. Now, as I was saying, the darker and bluer the colour, the better, the less delta V required. And it actually takes a relatively small amount of delta V to get to Duna. 1,687 is the lowest amount. And that has been selected for us by default over here. You can see that the yellow marker here is here in the roughly in the centre of this blue zone. But you could click anywhere in the heat map to choose another departure date or another period of transfer. Now, having selected your date, the great part of the transfer window planner is it also integrates with Kerbal Alarm Clock. So let's click Add KSC Alarm, and we will now have that alarm programmed here into Kerbal Alarm Clock. So we don't need the transfer window planner anymore. But there are some bonuses hidden behind the Kerbal Alarm Clock window, and you just saw them flash up there. And that is the actual details of the transfer. So it actually records in the comments when you should start burning, how long your burn is going to take, and even the ejection angle and the amount of delta V. And we can see that if we click on the alarm, the actual details here now pinned to the screen, so we can see that we're going to need a pro-grade delta V of 1028.7 and a normal delta V of 124.4. Now, our alarm margin is actually quite large for a transfer window. Our orbital period is going to be about 30 minutes. So let's give ourselves 25 minutes warning for sort of one orbit's worth of warning for setting up and planning our manoeuvre. So let's close that alarm. Now you'll notice, and this is something that's been confusing me for a couple of days, the actual time here to Duna transfer 4 days, 5 hours and 17 minutes. That's the time to the alarm, not the time to the event. It's the time to the alarm. So you've got, in our case, another 25 minutes over and above this amount here. So don't worry if that goes to 0, that's fine. You still have the 25 minutes. Now, that was a perfectly timed explanation because we are just completing our orbit circularization here. The KOS program has completed, so if we pop out to map view, just switch off trajectories. That's the white line you can see there. Just switch that off. You can see we have a periapsis of 95 and an apoapsis of 105, and that's within the usual margin of error that our KOS script tends to generate, and it's a perfectly acceptable orbit for what we need. Now, all that remains really is to wait for our Kerbal Alarm Clock alarm to arrive, and the best way to do that is to pop back down to the Space Center and then use the maximum amount of time warp that you have available when you are at the Kerbal Space Center. But you'll also notice I haven't jettisoned the fairing here, and that will become clear a little bit later. So let's rejoin our craft as we approach our final orbit. Well, we've now used our time warp to bring us around to 35 minutes to the alarm event. You can see up here in the top right, we've got an orbital period of 32 minutes. So that's going to be about 2 orbits until our transfer window opens. So let's just finish off time warping and just bring us all the way around. You can just see flickering there. That must be KSC just flickering down there below us. So didn't realise you could see it from here, but there you go. Just see it flickering as it goes past there. But we've got another 33 minutes to go until our event, until our alarm event, that is. So let's just keep going round. Not much really to see or do that we haven't seen or done before. We've got one more orbit to go before we will be starting to plan our manoeuvre. And of course, a lot of that planning has already happened via the manoeuvre node planner, the transfer window planner, and the display that we're going to use out of Kerbal Alarm Clock. So let's go round at 11 minutes to go, 10, back onto the dark side. So we should be over KSC when the alarm finally triggers. There's the Mun there, just peering over the horizon. There's sunrise. 2 minutes to go to our alarm. Time warp dropping down for us automatically as part of Kerbal Alarm Clock. So 3 seconds, and there we go. So that is the alarm complete. Now, I'm not actually going to cancel this alarm just now, because if I do, I'll lose all the display that we've got in front of us. So I'm not going to press delete on close and close it right now. So let's go back out to the map mode and plan our manoeuvre. Now, first things first, let's just chuck down any old manoeuvre. So let's just add a manoeuvre here. Now, in theory, you should just now need to type in all of these details into Precise Node, including the universal time at which we are supposed to be doing our manoeuvre. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So let's put it in. So you can see depart at UT 50 29709. Then we need prograde 1028.7, 1028.7, and then a normal delta V of 124.4. Now, if we zoom out a bit, you'll quite obviously see this is nowhere near getting us an encounter. This is Duna here, so if we set that as target, this is nowhere near getting us our encounter. And I'm not sure why it is so inaccurate. Maybe it's a miscalculation based on the craft that we have. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But there is a way to estimate the correct departure date, and that is to show the ejection angle, which actually draws in exactly which direction you should be launching prograde, which is here. So we can actually drag our maneuver node back to roughly this point here, and that is a much better approximation of where we should be going. And you can see our very, very, very close encounter already appearing here up on the top right, and that's 105,000 kilometers. Doesn't seem very close, but those markers look pretty close to me. So I think what we'll do is we will start a series of adjustments using Precise Node and see if we can get ourselves a much better encounter. First of all, let's clear off the ejection angle so that doesn't keep displaying on the screen. And just use the adjustments in Precise Node to get a little bit closer. So first of all, let's see if adjusting the time brings us any closer. So let's go in units of 1. We are going to be 105, so let's bring ourselves forward in units of 1. That seemed to do a big jump there, so let's go back in units of 1. There we go. So 110, so that's pretty close. Let's go forward in units of 0.01. Too far. Go back again. 110. I don't know that we're making it much better by moving forward and back. 110 still. So that's probably the best launch window we're going to get. So now let's make some very slight adjustments using both prograde and the normal delta V. So let's just remind ourselves, 110. So let's go forward a little. 113, so that's going the wrong way. So let's go back. So 109. Oh, too far. So that's the best, 108. So let's just try a change to the normal delta V. 108, 900. It's going the wrong way, so let's go back. going too far. Seems to be getting a little bit better. 108,500. Let's go in slightly larger jumps. $107. $105. $103. $97. So we're definitely going in the right direction. $92. 90. 87. 83. 'I don't like the fact that the descending node is now getting quite a long way away. 80. 79. I think we're probably getting pretty close. 78. So I think we're 77. Let's just try some fine adjustments on departure. 78. 79. That's going the wrong way. There we go. We have an encounter. Let's just focus on Duna and just see how close that approach really is. So that's coming in quite a way off to one side and a little bit below. Let's see if we can bring that back in. So this is just leaving very slightly earlier. You can see we're coming much, much closer. And now let's readjust our normal. This is taking it back up towards the original value we had. So you can see that adjusting the time at which we leave is certainly bringing us now to a much more accurate arrival. Or at least the transfer window was much more accurate if you put the departure date to one side. So let's just come back again. There we go. Getting much, much closer now. Now, of course, we'll probably do a correction. Let's see how close. There we go. We're very close now. So that's, what, 1 million meters. So let's just keep bringing it up. Whoops, too far. So let's go in much smaller steps now for there we go. Oh, too far. Let's go in very small steps now. 300 kilometers. $293. 287. Perhaps we'll go up. We'll go up one. 248. But we will start a little bit earlier and then keep coming up. Whoops, too far now. There we go. So that's 28 kilometres. Now the atmosphere started about 50. Now the chances of us executing this manoeuvre quite as accurately as we appear to have predicted it is pretty unlikely. So if we compare what we've actually put into precise node with what we were predicted, clearly the departure date is a little bit off by about 4 hours, 4 and a bit hours, which is quite a way, really. We've used the pretty much exactly the same prograde delta V, but the normal delta V is actually less, so we've actually saved ourselves some fuel. Now, with that said, I'm going to close the alarm and we're going to go and return back to our vessel. With that all said, I'm not actually going to use the remaining fuel that's in this tank, and that's simply because I don't want the manoeuvre to require any staging. So we'll eject that. So let's decouple that stage. And because we decoupled the stage manually, this engine won't be active. So let's just activate that stage. And then let's just bring ourselves around to our manoeuvre node, because we don't need the Kerbal alarm clock anymore. Let's just close that. Let's bring ourselves around to our manoeuvre node, trying not to whack the orange tank here with the fairing. I think it's probably far enough away now. Where are we? There we go. Now this isn't looking too positive, is it? With that orange tank now more or less in our flight path. We've got 8 minutes to the node. I am a little bit concerned we are going to hit our debris as we come around. But let's see. Let's see, shall we? Let us move ourselves around to our manoeuvre node. So you can see down there, down in the bottom left, we've got 7 minutes to our manoeuvre node. This is going to be pretty close, pretty close. But let's see, so that's 6 minutes. Five minutes. And there's 3 minutes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up KOS. We've got the KOS module inside that fairing there on the satellite component, so we can run our node execution script. And as we know, that will carry out first a pre-alignment, and the pre-alignment phase is at 96 seconds, or 1 minute 36. So let's get ourselves roughly lined up. There we go. And then fast forward time to about 1 minute 40. So there we go, 2 minutes 40. 2 minutes 10. There we go, just missed the alignment, but that's fine. KOS will catch up. So burn is going to begin at 36 seconds. So there we go, we're down to 46 seconds. So hands off the controls. Let us see where, there we go, there's our debris. So I think our debris drifted off out of our direct line of travel. Cross fingers, will be okay. So let's just leave the marvel of KOS to complete its task. There we go. So we were well, about 150 meters from our debris. So of all the directions I could have discarded it, I discarded it into our flight path. Great, I'll remember that next time. Let's just close this control window up. There we go. So alternate resource panel there, displaying what fuel, liquid fuel and oxidizer we have. We've got plenty. We've got way more than we actually need. We've got about 700 meters per second to go, and we've got over 3,200 in the tank, so that's plenty. So what's that, about a third of the way through now? 600 meters per second still to go. 33 seconds of burn remaining. Let's just pop out to map mode and focus back on the vessel, and then just watch as our, there we go, let's just focus here on Kerbin, and just watch as our flight path expands beyond first the Mun, and then Minmus, and then out towards Duna. So it's at this point we cross our fingers and see how well the node execution script is going to perform. So we are almost complete, 60 odd meters per second still to go. And there we go. A bit of flickering, a little bit of flickering there, but it does seem to have an encounter. So let's just focus our view here on Duna. It does seem to be way out to the right. Now what I'm going to do is just close chaos. We don't need that now. I'm just going to go back out of map mode, and I'm going to derate the engine to do a few little changes to our direction. So let's bring that down to 9%. Now if I refocus back here on Duna and just very gently bring up the throttle, we'll see whether, what have we got, 27 million meters goes either up or down by continuing a little bit of a burn in this direction, because we did have a little bit of delta V left over. Now it's actually going up. That actually went up by 100,000 meters, just that tiny amount. So let's just go back around towards the retrograde marker and just slow down a little bit and see if we can bring this in a little bit. Now you can do the maneuvers here. It's probably a little bit more efficient to do them way out away from Kerbin's sphere of influence, but we've got so much delta V in the tank and it takes so little. Let's just see what we can do. So that's 27 million and 300,000, just about make it out there. So let's just tap on the gas, come down to 26, 25. We're about equatorial, but we are going below, so we are probably going to want to come either normal or anti-normal, just to prevent that going too far. So let's just, there we go. Coming right in now. 7 million meters. You see the throttle is really very low. Is very low, and yet it was coming in very rapidly. So now I think we need to, is it this way? So this should orientate ourselves, is that northwards? And again, we can just have a look at whether we're going out or back. So that's coming in very slowly. So that's 3.7, 3.6. Bring up the gas a little bit, 3.4, 3.3. No, 2.8, 2.7, 2.3, 1.9. This is coming in very nicely. Because we've got a satellite aboard, we do actually want to get the satellite to a polar orbit. So this is actually playing out really well. So that's 1.2. 1.1. So there we are. We're now 800, 700. So now we want to go back to towards our prograde. And just see if we can bring it across as well. There we go. So there we are, 400,000. And let's just bring it in just a little bit more. Now just the wobbling of our craft over that long distance is making this a little bit tricky to keep the cursor on. So let's just gently throttle up. So there we go, 420, 400. So we're now below 400. If I go slightly in the prograde direction, we should start bringing it back over. That was only very slightly in the prograde direction, so let's get back on. There we go. That should do. That should do very well. Now it's a bit too high to take account of aerobraking. We need to get down to about 16 kilometers to do a decent aerobrake. But for our purposes, this is a great rendezvous. It's 125,000 meters, so 125 kilometers. So that's ideal. So let's come back out and just see exactly where we are on our flight plan. Now we're still here, still in the influence of Kerbin. Now, under most circumstances, this flight is going to take well, very long time. And I'd normally go back to KSC and do a few missions whilst we were on our way. But actually, do you know what? I am so excited to get to Duna, I am going to simply jump straight there. So we'll rejoin our craft as we approach our sphere of influence change into Duna. See you in a moment. Right, well, we're coming up on our sphere of influence change now. I added a Kerbal alarm clock alarm for the sphere of influence change and then just time warped to the max to bring us to this objective. So we're going to be a couple of minutes shy of the sphere of influence change. So let's just close that alarm and then close up Kerbal alarm clock. So we're about to switch over. So let's just time warp a little bit ahead. There we go. Time warp 100. There we go. And there we are. So let's just bring ourselves out of time warp. Now, we'll have recalculated our periapsis, so 147, so a little bit further out than we had originally predicted. But that's no problem, because we're going to have to make some changes anyway. So let's just add ourselves another maneuver. And what I'd like to do is to bring us into about a periapsis of 16 kilometers, that is, not 16 meters, obviously, and also bring ourselves to an inclination of about 90 degrees. So let's see how well we can do with that. So I'm just going to pull back here on the retrograde marker and just watch down there in the bottom right of precise node what our periapsis is going to be. So that's about 136 kilometers. I want to bring it down to about 16. 16 is a pretty good periapsis for doing an aero-capture around Duna. Any more than that and you will probably be heading towards the surface. Much more than that, you probably will just be doing a flyby. So there we go, we're down to 100 kilometers, there we go, 96. Now the first pass of pulling on this handle, I'm not going to be too accurate about it because I still have to deal with the inclination, so we'll worry about that in a second. So we're down to 73 kilometers, 70. There goes 64, still coming in. 15. So that would be, we are now into the atmosphere. So we would be experiencing some drag in the atmosphere already. And we're now down to 30. Down to 17. There we go. Now I'm not going to do an absolutely perfect maneuver for aerobraking just yet, because I want to change I want to change our inclination. So let's just take a pull on that. So there we go. So that looks almost polar. Let's just pull a little bit further. There we go. Once we completed the maneuver, we will make some fine adjustments. So again, let's get ourselves pre-aligned. We have a day to make this maneuver, so we've got plenty of time. So there we go. Let's just line ourselves up on our maneuver node, bring up our KOS window, and just run our maneuver node through the KOS routine that we have. There we go. So it's going to wait to align up at, what's that, just over 2 minutes. So we can now warp forward to our maneuver using the warp to maneuver node handle. So let's just click on that now. That will give us a 3-minute window to our maneuver. And we need 2 minutes and 9 seconds for this burn. So there we are, the maneuver node. We're now ready to execute our maneuver node. So I'm just going to bring it forward a little bit in time so it locks in our maneuver. There we go. So it's locked in the maneuver. So now we can forward to 1 minute and 9 seconds. Now this is actually with the derated engine, I've just realised, which is why it's going to take quite so long. But I'm going to let it do that. I'm going to let it do that and complete the move. It doesn't make a great deal of difference. It just means the maneuver will take a little bit longer. So let's bring ourselves through to 1 minute and 9. There we go. So 1 minute 13. And there we go as it starts burning off the maneuver. I don't suppose we'll see much thrust out of it at all. But like I said, I'm keeping the fairing in position because during the aero brake, we're going to get a lot of heating effect, and that could prove problematic for the sensitive equipment that is hiding inside that fairing. So we're going to leave the fairing on until after we have completed all of our maneuvers. So we've got 195 delta V still to go, down to 180. To 170. 150 coming up. So this is about, well, just under half of the way through our burn. Now, one of the tips which I didn't even listen to myself, but one of the tips for making fine maneuvers, apart from derating your main engine, apart from reducing the thrust on your main engine, is to use RCS. RCS is not just good for docking, it's also really good for making very fine maneuvers for approaches to planets where you're a long way off. Therefore, even the slightest change will be quite significant over the distance of your flight. So I could have added RCS to this vehicle. Now that isn't one of the mistakes that I highlighted at the beginning. So if you were thinking that was it, incorrect guess, I'm afraid. But that is a handy tip. It is something that you will find very useful, particularly when you are trying to hit a tiny target such as Moho or Elu. I mean, any distant target that is a small target will benefit from such tiny and fine maneuvering. So bear that in mind if you want to use it for your own approaches to these distant targets. Now, in the background there, we can see Duna and its little moon Ike. We will be visiting Duna in this particular episode with both a satellite and a lander, so we'll see that in a few minutes, just as our manoeuvre finishes up. There we go. Now, one of the advantages of derating the engine is it does mean it gives the KOS module a lot of leeway for completing the manoeuvre. So it was just 0.1 of a metre per second inaccurate in this case. So let's just close that window. Now you can see we've got an inclination of 89 almost 89.6. So to be honest, I'm not actually going to change that. But what I might change, if we now have a look at where we are here on the map, is our periapsis isn't quite where we would want it. So I'm going to lock myself onto the retrograde marker, and I'm just going to slow ourselves down until this just about hits 16. So let's just put a gentle puff into the engine. So there we can see it's starting to come down now. Again, it's still the derated engine, so we can be quite vigorous with the throttle itself. We want this to get down to a little over 16, so we've got about halfway. So we can either watch it here, or we can watch it up here on the Kerbal Engineer display. So we're down to 20. There we go, 16,300. There we go, that should be perfect. Now we've got plenty of electric charge, we've got the SAS on, and of course I've got some of my can't do without solar panels here, which will ensure that we have plenty of battery charge. There are some batteries hidden inside here, so we have plenty of charge to be going on with, and we have plenty of fuel. We've got 2,253 meters per second, but I'm not going to go for the derated engine now. I'm going to go for the maximum thrust, and that will be useful on our landing. So let's just warp forward towards the point of our approach to aerobrake. So this is going to be way out here, so let's warp to here. This is going to bring us to quite a long way out of the atmosphere, but still with plenty of time to make any adjustments. So let's just come out of there we go, let's just come out of map mode, and you can see us approaching the doesn't look like it, it's a bit misleading, but approaching the south pole of Duna. Where are we? So we've got the sun over here to, there we go, there's a sun over there, and there's Ike. Just about make it out. There's a rather dark Ike just here in the background. Can't really see it very well, but let's see if we can get ourselves a picture for Gene back at KSC. Well, everyone's back at KSC. This is an unmanned craft, so it's something for everyone to have a look at. Now, we are at 130 kilometers. The atmosphere starts at about 50. So we can quite happily warp forward, and when you hit the atmosphere, the time warp will be cancelled anyway, because it will go from the full game warp through to physics warp, so it will automatically cancel out for you. Camera swings around, give us a nice 360 of our vehicle as we approach the atmosphere. So we're at 60, but I'm actually going to bring myself out of warp, just give it a bit of time to get ourselves locked onto prograde. Now, we don't have an ablating heat shield here on the back. We're just going to allow our Poodle engine to take the brunt of the aerobraking maneuver. So we're at 50 now. So this is just as the atmosphere begins to kick in. You can just start to see us hitting the atmosphere. So it won't be long now before we start to see a few of the atmospheric effects bringing us to I was about to say a grinding halt. It's hardly going to be a grinding halt as we thunder through the atmosphere at 1,436 meters per second. So we're starting to hit the upper atmosphere now. You can just see that darker color there on the atmosphere pressure meter, but no atmospheric effects as yet. So 36 kilometers, 1,445 meters per second as we come in here towards the South Pole, very icy looking South Pole. There we go, starting to get some of those atmospheric effects, and I think for the benefit of KSC, I really think we should be recording this. So let's get a snap of that. So we're at 30 kilometers now. The effects now are definitely brightening up. (1,450 meters per second). We are beginning to slow down a little. Our periapsis is dropping very slightly, and the time to periapsis is still a little over a minute. So let's cross our fingers that we have chosen the right aerobraking altitude. We'll keep an eye out for any heat effects on the engine as well, just see if it overheats, but we should be okay. The atmosphere is a little bit thinner than it is on Kerbin, and doesn't extend to such a great height as well, so I think we should be just fine. Sun beginning to drop towards the horizon now. Again, we can still see the dark side of Ike just there above our craft. We've just dropped below 15 kilometers for our periapsis with 46 seconds still to go. So let's just pop out to map mode and see exactly where we are. So we're just coming round the dark side of Duna as well. So we are going to come, maybe just keep in the sunlight, perhaps just come in the sunlight, but just going around the day-night divide for Duna. So we can see we're at periapsis now of 15 kilometers, just over 15.5 kilometers, T-minus 30 to our periapsis. But if we zoom out, we can see that our apoapsis is rapidly coming in as there we go, just caught it, as we have now been captured by Duna. The aerobraking has indeed worked, and now it is just a case of hoping against hope that our apoapsis doesn't sink into the surface. But I've done my research. I think we should be okay. So we're 9 seconds now away from periapsis. 7 seconds, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we are now beyond our periapsis. So we are now starting to rise up out of the atmosphere, so the rate of aerobraking will reduce, and we should find ourselves with a very good apoapsis there. Now we're still at an inclination of 89.6 degrees, which is very, very good for the purposes of our satellite. Now we've not got ScanSat aboard, so it's all really just role play and theory for now, but let's just role play that out, positioning our satellite in an orbit around Duna that is more or less polar. Now we have the M700 scanner aboard our orbiting satellite, and that needs an orbit of around about 200 kilometers. So we will be sorting that out once we get back out to our apoapsis. So our periapsis is now dropped to 15,200 meters, so just over 15 kilometers. Let's just pop back out of map mode and just see how we're doing. We're now heading away at the upside, the upside of Duna. Let's just take ourselves a nice shot here as we just capture the sun on the horizon. We've lost, I think we lost view of Ike. No, there's Ike. We can just about make out Ike there. So let's just take ourselves another shot of Ike. And we can see here right up at the top, our apoapsis is just dropping below 300 kilometers. Periapsis is just 14.5 kilometers. So if we were to do another orbit, we would find ourselves dropping very, very deep into Duna's atmosphere, which, if you were going straight for a landing, is actually not such a bad idea to do a couple of aerobraking passes, because it would save you a lot of fuel. Probably use some drogue chutes as well. Drogue chutes, less drag, but able to cope with the higher speeds that you might be approaching with under those circumstances. Now, we're not using drogue chutes, we're just using 4 standard radial mount chutes. So they probably wouldn't survive such an approach. So we're going to do a powered approach. So that we can make use of the remaining fuel, which we've got just over 2,000 delta V. So there we go. The camera has now rotated just as we've come out of that sort of middle layer of the atmosphere. So let's just take ourselves another few shots here for. Let's have a look. What's a nice one here for? We can just see the ice caps there in the background. So let's just take that, something to send back to KSC, and that perhaps as well. So we're back out now to 23 kilometers. We're in the thinnest part of the atmosphere, but whilst you're in the atmosphere you can only do physics warp, so you can only go up to ×4, but we'll leave that to we'll just leave warping for now. The periapsis height has dropped down to 11 kilometers now, but we have an apoapsis of 150 kilometers. So when we get up to our apoapsis, we'll do a little bit of a maneuver just to bring our satellite's orbit back out to about 200 kilometers. That's probably ideal for the M700 scanner. So 26 kilometers now. Just check out any damage that might have occurred to our craft. Seems to be doing pretty well for all the heat that we managed to suffer from, all of that ionization that we saw going on. So our craft seems to be doing pretty well. So like I say, we're going to do a powered approach. I won't say it's going to be a powered landing. We'll do a powered approach. So we're now at 30 kilometers. And I think what we're going to do, we are going to cut it right here and then just wait for the craft to reach apoapsis, and we'll rejoin it then. Well, we're out of the atmosphere now, but for all that time we spent cruising our way up to apoapsis, the portion of time we spent in the atmosphere, even the upper atmosphere, we've actually lost another 5 kilometers off our periapsis height, which for our satellite would be a bad thing, but for our lander, not so much. Let's get ready to deploy our satellite. So let's just pop back out of map mode. Now, in order to deploy our satellite is going to be going on ahead of us. Let's just rotate ourselves around to face prograde. There we go. So let's just face prograde. There we are. So let's just lock ourselves onto prograde. And it is about time we disposed of our fairing. We will not be needing that again. So let's just tap on the staging. There we go. So that shatters away our fairing there. And you can see the satellite here at the top. We've got the M700 scanner here still closed up. But I think our first job of the day is just to extend the satellite solar panels. So let's just reach in here and extend the panels. And I think we should just rotate the craft so that those panels are best facing the sun. There we go. There we are. Next, we can extend the scanner. So let's just do that. Finally, I think you can just make out the rest of the vehicle. We've got the tiny local transmitter in here. Let's just extend that. So that's the little Communitron 16. And then we've got our little gizmo. Now I'm going to rotate the craft all the way around because we've got our little gizmo here for the Communitron 8888, the thing we practiced quite a bit of inside the VAB. And that's our little infernal robotics servo. So let's just expand that. There we go. And now we can extend our Communitron 8888. That just gives us that little bit of extra clearance there for that particular antenna. So I think it's about time we left. So let's just control from here and then decouple from here. There we go. Let's just bring ourselves into stability assist, get ourselves onto prograde. Apoapsis time is in 1 minute. It doesn't actually have to be accurate, this particular part, so we will just make our way forward in a moment. So let's activate the engine because we manually stage. Let's just activate the engine by hand as well, and then just pop back out to map mode. Now our periapsis is currently 5 kilometers. We want that to be up at about 200 kilometers. So let's just throttle up and just drive out that periapsis until we get a new apoapsis of about 200 kilometers. So there's the apoapsis swinging round. There we go. Get ready to cut the engine. There we go, 201, that's fine. We're out of the atmosphere here at 114, and we're well out of the atmosphere at 200. So we will deal with correcting and perfecting the satellite's orbit to a nice circular 200 kilometers at a later date. Now, we need to worry about landing not our satellite. If we just change over to our lander craft, it doesn't look much like a lander, but it is a lander craft. This is what is going to be going down to the surface. So let's get ourselves prepared. So let's get ourselves prepared onto prograde. And then we are going to walk forward until we get back into the atmosphere. I'll rejoin you then. Well, we're just approaching the top of the atmosphere, and if we go to map mode, we can use the trajectories mod, which is this white and red line. The red line is inside the atmosphere. The white line is outside the atmosphere, and it shows us we're going to land quite deep into the polar regions. What I want to do is try and land somewhere here, and if we do that, we'll be able to go into polar regions, highlands, lowlands, midlands, which hopefully will be around this area. So let's put ourselves a little maneuver node. So let's add a maneuver node here and pull back on the handle and just bring ourselves, there we go. So we're going to land roughly in this section here. Let's just go a little bit further into the polar regions there. So that's going to take us just over 400 of our remaining delta V, which is just over 1,000. That should be perfect. Now we've got a minute 46 to our maneuver node. It doesn't actually matter because this isn't a particularly accurate burn that we have to do here. We just have to bring ourselves down to a reasonably gentle landing. The parachutes will do the rest. So let's just warp forward about a minute. So we've got node in 121. And then we go, there we go, 1 minute. So we give ourselves about 30 seconds to execute this node. So let's just throttle up. There we go. So let's just pop back into map mode, and you can see that we're just here, just over the edge. Now, I'm probably going to slam on the brakes when we get sort of around about here. So we are going to fall a little bit short from this particular or this predicted location. So let's just pop back out of map mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait till we're sort of in this sort of region here, and then I'm basically going to burn the rest of our delta V. Until we're basically going basically straight down. So I'm just going to bring it to a hard stop just as we come over this ridge here. So we're just getting into the upper atmosphere here. So let's get ourselves on surface velocity. Surface velocity 544, which is way too much for our parachutes, which are highlighted in red. So let's just wait now until we get to around about here. Now we're flying over, we're over Midlands, we're now over Highlands, so there's probably going to be quite a few biomes in this sort of area that we'll be able to travel around with our little surprise, which is hiding inside this service module, this service bay here at the top. So this is lowlands, so yeah, we're definitely going to be over quite a few different biomes. 26 kilometers up now. We're just coming up to the thicker part of the atmosphere, and that will slowly start to have an effect on our velocity. So that'll be slowing us down as well as we start getting into the thicker part of the atmosphere. Now we're just coming up to this polar region here. So I'm just going to start getting ready to do the burn. So let's hit the engine now, and I want to drive that retrograde marker up to the top of the nav ball. You can see our surface velocity is coming down very, very quickly now. And we're basically going to do a semi-soft landing. There we go. So we've got a smidgen of fuel left. Oh, you can hear the Rover wheels there inside. So let's just get those brakes on. And I want to spend the last of our fuel just making sure we are coming straight down. I don't want any lateral velocity. There we go. Now we can launch our or deploy our parachutes. So let's just use up the last of our fuel. Just rather overdid the correction there to our direction. I'd forgotten that we were slightly off vertical there. But let's now deploy the engine section and arm our parachutes. So our parachutes will deploy when the pressure rises above their deployment threshold, and hopefully the hard landing that our engine is going to experience very shortly will leave it vaporized across the surface, so there won't be any remaining junk below us. waiting for that splashdown. There go our parachutes, partially deployed. Oh, looks like we're going to have a little bit of garbage. Never mind. And our parachutes are fully deployed now. So we're going down at... Oh no, there we go. Fully vaporized, no garbage left behind. But we're going down now at 8.3 meters per second. It's a little more than I would have liked, but it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be a medium hard impact, shall we say. So let's just take a few pictures for the lads and lasses back at KSC. Let's get ourselves a little picture there of the landscape up towards the polar region. As we approach the surface, so we're only a few meters up now. Can we see our? Can we see our? No, we can't quite see our. Oh, there we go. You can see our shadow coming towards us here. Coming down for our landing. And a little bit of a rock, but we are now down. We are now down on the surface of Duna. It's the first time we've been out of Kerbin's sphere of influence, and it's the first time we've landed anything on Duna. So well done back at KSC. It is about time we got on with the key, the core part of our mission, which is the surprise that we find inside this service base. So if you've not been watching, here is the surprise. If you have, you'll know what the surprise is, and here it comes. It is a little micro rover, a little science rover that we're going to take around, packed with all kinds of science. So let's just grab ourselves in here and make sure. I can't quite get in and make control from here. There we go. Control from here. There's a tiny little Probodyne body in there, so that's what I wanted to control from. Next, we are going to decouple from the mounting point, so let's decouple that. There we go, a bit of a shake as we were decoupled, and you'll see that the suspension has expanded, and this was the problem I was having. It was pre-expanded in the VAB under the new version of the mainframe software, but the problem it's given us is we are now jammed up against the decoupler, as you can see. So let's get the brakes off and just bring ourselves forward very slowly. There we go. See if we can bring ourselves out. And there we go. We are out on the surface of Duna. Let's get those brakes on and marvel at what we have in front of us. Let's get our solar panels out. We've got a couple of fixed solar panels, one on the front and one on the back, and they face upwards, so are best used during the main part of the Duna day. Well, that was surprisingly successful. The lads and lasses back at KSC have done us proud. We are very pleased to find ourselves here and doing science. We do some science. I don't actually know where we are. Because we don't have our Kerbal Engineer module, but we can use some of our basic repeatable science items, and just crammed in here is a thermometer. How the heck am I going to get in here? This was not a clever place to plant it. Can I get in there? There we go, the too hot thermometer. Let's toggle the display, and there we go. Let's take a reading. We have 32 science to be sent, because we can't, there's no way this rover is coming back, so we may as well send, and we're going to send 32 science, so let's send that, and that is from Duna's Highlands, as it says there at the top, so let's just send that. So that's going to send up to our satellite high above us. There we go, so that's 32 science deployed, and it took 45 electricity to send that, so that's That's not too bad. That's not too bad. Now, what other science do we have? Well, we've got on here on the side, we've got the press mat barometer. So let's log that. And that's going to be 48 science transmitted back. So let's send that. So let's start that transmission again. The Communitron there extends automatically. There we go. Another 48 science sends. We do have a seismometer here at the back, the double C seismic accelerometer. So let's log some science data, and that's 72 science. So let's send that back. I'm only reading out the transmittable science because, like I say, we're not sending this back. So again, Communitron up and transmitting back to our satellite, and from our satellite relay back to KSC. Now that's taking quite a lot of electricity to send that. So it was a good thing that, thank you very much Mike Aben for recommending that we have the additional batteries. We added these 2 additional batteries here on the front. Now we're definitely going to have to reorientate our craft in order to ensure we charge most effectively. So let's just take the brakes off and just turn ourselves towards the sun. There we go. I'll just put the brakes back on again. There we go. So we've only really got this panel because the sun is so low on the horizon. That is going to be a problem. We did choose perhaps a poor location for our landing spot given the orientation of our miniature panels. This panel, however, is giving sun exposure of almost 100%. At 99%. These panels are only a third at 37%, but that will recharge eventually. We do have some other experiments. They are some of the more expensive experiments as far as electronics, as far as electricity goes. So let's just try logging the magnetometer data. So there it goes, expanding out there to one side. That's 40 science, and we will get all of that science when transmitted back. So let's wait to transmit that science. So let's just keep that science because I think we really need to charge up our batteries before we do any further transmission. So let's toggle the magnetometer to just bring that in. We have 2 other experiments. Here at the front we have the X-ray diffraction surface analyzer. So let's collect that data. So you can just see the sample going out there. And then if you look quite closely, you can see the sample being taken. There we go. And that will give us 80 science when transmitted back to KSC. So let's keep that. Again, that did use a very large amount of science, which means this science experiment here at the back isn't going to be possible without a full recharge. This is the surface ablation laser light imager, but we can try one of these mystery goo containment units. Now we've got 2 of those, so we've only got 2 chances with these devices. So let's just observe the mystery goo and just see how much science we would get. So that's only going to give us 24 science, and I doubt that it's going to give us very much science anywhere else, but we will reset that experiment and try it out in a few other locations. Now that's been a good haul of science that we can send back to the KSC. We've sent some of it back already. We've sent some of it. So I think our little probe here, if we get nice in and close and get some screenshots to transmit back to KSC, they will appreciate that. But with that said, I think this has been a very successful mission. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.